Hey guys, this is a recap of the World Chess Championship, Game 8 with Ding versus Gukesh. Ding has the white pieces and he starts with the English, c4. And I think this is the first time we've gotten English in the match. As Gukesh, I don't think he's played it. He's been playing like e4, d4, and he's played knight f3. And then Ding, he's been playing, let's see. He's played knight f3, he's played d4, and I don't know. He's played e4 once. But yeah, I don't think we've gotten the English until now. So Gukesh responds with e5 and c3. These are pretty common. We get bishop b4, which is still pretty common. But it allows knight d5 hitting the bishop, and the theory is that the bishop goes back to e7. And like if trades, knight just develops, and then eventually you're going to kick this knight out, as we see in the game. So knight f3 from Ding, we get d6, we get g3, preparing to fiink out of this bishop. And then we get this move c6, which kicks out the knight, and so Ding captures it. We get knight captures, we get bishop g2, and then we get pretty much a prep move from Gukesh for sure, which is f6. And Ding has a lot of options here. He could play b4, he could castle, he can play d3, he can play b3, he can play queen c2, he can play queen b3. I think he can play d4. He might be able to play d4 here. So we get castles. I was hoping for b4 since I played the Polish a lot. Just like a queenside space advantage versus like a kingside space advantage. While also like black has the center, I guess. But we get castles, and then we get bishop e6 hitting the c4 pawn. So Ding protects it with b3. We get d5, striking in the center. Black has a really good hold. Just needs to develop a few pieces, get castled, and black will be probably even better. So we get bishop a3, which was not like a top choice by the engine, but it was still, like there were still plenty of moves white could play. And I think this is the first move where Gukesh got out of prep. I mean, he thought for 2 minutes, but the other moves he was just completely blitzing out. So, I think this is where he got out of prep, because I think after rook c1, he thought for 6 minutes. I think, yeah, so after bishop a3, I think it's a pretty good guess that both are definitely out of prep. Ding was out of prep for a while. Like, he's already been thinking. He thought for 14 minutes on castles. And he was looking at b4 in the press conference. All right, so let's go back to the game. Rook c1. Then we get a5. Rook e8 was preferred, like by the engine, just so it's. I think it's just like of a more flexible open, kind of just seeing what white does. You're gonna want to play rook e8, just unpinning, but he decides to go a5 earlier, so it's just like a more committal move. And then we get knight e1 from Ding, which is actually, I think, one of the top moves. What were the ideas? I think it opens this bishop, but I think there were just some lines. I don't remember, but it's a good flexible move. And there were some ideas like the knight going to d3 and these pawns, I guess. Oh yeah, I think also an idea is pushing f4, which we'll see in the game. So we get f4 actually right after rook e8. Then we get pawn takes. We get rook takes. We get another pawn takes. And so like his pawns are actually pretty solid now. He basically takes both times to alleviate some pressure, and now his pawns aren't going to be targets. So we get pawn takes here, and I think those are all top moves. Knight g6, top move. Rook e4, top move. We get 96. Rook e4 is an odd move. just because there were some ideas of f5 and rook e3, but I guess Ding basically is just trying to nullify this rook here. So we get knight c2. Definitely not a top computer choice, but still a good move. We get queen c7. We get knight d4. We get bishop f7, dropping back. Gukesh doesn't want to trade bishops for the knight. We get d3, knight e5, and then we get knight f3, and we get knight d7. So both players are just improving their pieces as best as they can. And this rook is a bit odd, so there's not really a good place for the rook to maneuver to, so he's got to trade it or he's going to ruin his pawn structure. So trades. And then I believe it's here where Ding plays his first inaccurate move. It's kind of odd too. For a grandmaster, like for me, I'd probably like still blunder it. Maybe like since I've seen this idea now, I could find it in a game, and like obviously in a blitz, I would probably still miss it, but like in a long time format, I might be able to see it, but for like a grandmaster to blunder b5 and queen b6 check, it's kind of odd that he would miss that, because it's only like in 2 moves. Like, so we have his move, and then queen check allows the pawn to recapture without losing it. So, and you can't play, let's say, not bishop b2. Let's just say queen d2, right? There's no b5 because the pawn is pinned. I mean, there is, right? But it's not as good because when you give this check and the king moves, right? H1, I guess, is bad. I guess the main idea is you need to keep this pawn protected. Like, this queen's going to get overloaded. But here, right, the rook's on the open file. See, in the other line, so like the difference is that after this, and this, or not H1, F1, the difference is that the rook is in the wrong spot. It should be on C1, not B1. So it's kind of odd for Ding to play that. So that was an odd choice. It's not losing or anything, but black has now 2 pawns against 1. So now white has to be extremely careful or it's going to be losing. And then Ding plays bishop b2, which again is another inaccurate move. He thought in the press conference that Gukesh couldn't take. And what he missed was the idea of self-pinning with the knights. He thought the queen was just going to move out of the way. But there's actually the winning move of knight c5. And it's a super complicated engine line. Neither player saw it. Gukesh actually thought knight c5 was winning, but it's pretty much drawing still. Me, I probably would not, like in a game, I wouldn't self-pin. I'd probably just move the queen. And as we'll see in the game, like self-pinning just allowed Ding to get a lot of counterplay. And here, there's the only move queen e1 to queen f2. You can't go to queen d2 because there's no queen e3, so it's not going to be good for you. And on top of that, this allows just b4. And so there's just no queen e3 here. And then queen e1 here, it's not a blunder because there's no takes, because there's an in-between move of moving the queen, defending this pawn. I mean, it was already defended by the knight, but... So queen's hit, and then you're hitting these 2 pieces. So queen has to move, and then you'll win a piece. So queen e1. So Gukesh didn't really know what to do here. He probably thought he's in a bad position because he's pinned. Although he does have like the 2 passed pawns. So he probably thought he could save the game because of those 2 pawns. That's what he was pretty much saying in that press conference. He didn't realize it was losing. So queen f2, Now this knight can never move, even though the queen's defended because there's 2 attackers. So you'll lose a piece. We get rook c8, bishop e3, rook c7, and the winning move was knight e1 with bishop like h3 idea. So like knight e1, if the bishop ever moves, you get bishop h3. And here you're threatening d4, d5. So you want to move the bishop to avoid this idea. But if you move it, then you have bishop h3. So that's why you lose. And in the other lines, with the knight here, and let's say here, this still isn't quite winning for black, but it's still a little better. Yeah, so in this line, it actually f7. What about e6? So this is what Gukesh would have played even with this knight here, perhaps, maybe. Bishop, our queen f2 is actually losing here. So yeah, like this is better with this knight here, and I would assume, like say knight. Main thing is that this rook is defended. So like say you go here. When you go here, the knight can move, because the rook's defended with the bishop. And the other lines, the knight was here, so the rook wasn't defended. So like that's why it's much better to do the other knight. And there's all these other lines that this knight is just better. It just opens lines for the queen. Yeah, so. And like, if you really think about it, like, there's not really a way for white to get an attack on the king immediately. So, like, just like practically speaking, not like calculation speaking, so just like based on evaluation, you should be able to figure out, that like you should be okay with this move. It always does look weird, right? Because you want to move towards the center to like help on both sides if needed. But if you can figure out that like white can't really do anything, so you should be fine to move this knight here. And just try to push these pawns as well and have both knights help. All right, so that was a big moment in the game. And so Gukesh doesn't find the right idea, so Ding has an advantage now. However, it's not very simple. And he had to find knight e1 to like basically put the game away. And obviously, yeah, because like it's very simple with knight e1. After you play knight e1, you can do h3, d4, d5. There's not really a way for black to defend. But again, like it's always hindsight. Like once you have an engine, then you're just like, oh, it just makes sense. But knight d4, he's low on time, Ding, because he gets like out prepped in the openings, and he has to think a long time, so he doesn't like just get a losing position out of the opening. Because like in the opening, you don't have that many choices. You have to be really precise, or you're just gonna be worse or losing. And he was, but one moment he made a mistake, and then Gukesh made a mistake, and then he plays, he's in time pressure, so he plays knight d4. Still a really good move. It could be winning with perfect play, but it's hard to tell. It's really complicated. So after he plays knight here, the threat is just to take the bishop, and then just actually, is the threat that takes. Yeah. So the threat is just trading all the pieces down and winning a piece. And with more pieces off the board, it's going to be more winning for white. Because these pawns aren't too advanced yet. So we get bishop f7, preventing takes, and then we get the knight jumping to c6, threatening to take. And so Gukesh sacrifices the exchange to keep the game going. So he's just not losing a piece. And after the trades, we get h6, which is practically speaking one of the best moves. And pretty much the only moves that keep your advantage are like queen g2, bishop e3, and then queen f3. So like these two moves in here are the best practical moves to try and win. Basically, all these moves, if you can tell, they basically prevent black from like consolidating, start pushing these pawns, start getting the queen in a better position. Like these queen moves are kind of odd though, because it allows bishop d5. So I think bishop e3 was the most practical choice, hitting the queen, making it move. But even then, it's still really complicated. So I don't really fault Ding for not finding it. The main move he had to find was knight e1, but again, he didn't have time. So easier said than done. But yeah, so practically speaking, this game was going to be a draw. So Ding plays rook e1, and then Gukesh plays b4, which is a little inaccurate. A4 would have been a little bit better. I think it's because there's some tactics with like rook d2 and bishop takes b4. So the queen has to sidestep, allowing probably like some consolidation from white. Like there's a check, but like queen g2 I guess is losing. Because the queen's hitting the knight. And if check, I think queen e3. If queen d5, you have to go like e4. Yeah, I don't know why it's showing this line, because that just repeats. So like queen e4, and then there has to be a trade or what? Yeah, there, and then if here, yeah, I guess the queen has to move, and that's just better for white. And then after trades, white should be able to win these pawns. King will be able to defend some of these pawns, and then white should be able to convert. All right. But instead of king d2 right away, we get queen d4, which is kind of a weird move. I'm not really sure what the idea was. Let me see. Yeah, because like he goes back anyway after queen g2. So Ding was a little bit inaccurate with this move. And after queen g2, there's some threats of knight f3 check, winning the queen. So the queen has to move. Queen moves back to f2, and if check, you just take, obviously. Then we get some repetition of the position. However, Gukesh decides to not play queen g2 and plays queen a2 check, which is a little inaccurate, as like this would have been just drawing, right? But because it would have been threefold repetition. If it wasn't, it still would have been good for white, but because it's threefold, it would have been good. But queen a2 is not losing. At first, like at low depth, the engine thinks it's losing, but it's not, as there is queen e6. Like Stockfish 17 doesn't think it's losing, but like the Stockfish, like on the broadcast for Elite Chess, like when the game's live, it doesn't have the neural like network evaluation, just has the handcraft evaluation. So I thought it was losing, but it's not. So here, Ding can play on for a win. He gives a check on d8 and takes the pawn. So now this is very Josh. If he wanted to like have his best chance to win, he should have played queen d6, right? And the only move to draw is queen h3. Everything else is losing. And I think basically there's some more counterplay with the knight f3 checks. But anyway, we get queen d8 check going for the pawn. We get b3. Rook c1 is the best move. And then Gukesh really only has two moves to like really stay in the game and try to equalize. We get queen d5. And here, if Ding wanted to go for some more ideas and try to win, he would play queen a7. with the idea being if this bishop ever moves, like say here, you have bishop f8. And not immediately, right? Because the bishop's not going to move, but like I think let's show the best line. Bishop a3, and I believe, yeah, bishop g6, and then there's bishop f8, and there's still a draw, but yeah, queen a7 is a little bit more accurate. Queen b4 is also kind of a good attempt because we get queen g2, and if he wanted to keep pressing for a win, I believe he should have played let me just look at the engine lines, because obviously I didn't find it, the engine found it. Was it h4? I don't think it was h4. What move was it? Oh, I can't remember. It wasn't bishop f8. I think it was h4. If takes. And then here I believe yeah, I'm forgetting the move order, but basically I think it was this, and then bishop d6, something like this was a good attempt to win, with this being the only move, and you can try going for trades. But I also think there was an attempt to go here as well. You could go queen f4, going for a win. So Ding could have played on. There were some ideas, but Ding didn't want to, you know, blunder anything or keep the game going. So he just trades with queen e4 check. And it would be a win, although Gukesh has this resource of pushing b2, and after the rook moves, you think you're just losing the pawn, but unfortunately there is this fork here. Getting the piece or the exchange back, right? And here they agreed to a draw. So that was the game. It was pretty intense, and I thought someone was going to lose, but at the end of the day, it became a draw. Neither could find the winning ideas in the positions. They were pretty complicated. I don't think any of the winning ideas were easy. The easiest one was, I guess, knight e1, you would say, right? But even then, it's like, I don't know. It's a very engine move, and Ding definitely didn't have any time. So yeah, that was the game. The press conference was interesting, at least like when they were analyzing the game. I like that the most. Basically, post-mortem. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.